Good afternoon, everyone. So from one anting-anting to another anting-anting. So I will be discussing community anting-anting, understanding local practices, and environmental protection. So my presentation is a proposed teaching demo for bringing into the concept of protection of the anting-anting into environmental protection, which can be used to discuss to the students in class. So this demo does not ask whether anting-anting works in a literal sense. Instead, it asks, what does the anting-anting reveal about Filipino ideas of danger, protection, sacrifice, and vulnerability, and how can these ideas help students think about environmental protection today? So the target learners are undergraduate students, either in Philippine studies, or literature in the environment, cultural studies, or even teacher education. And learning outcomes explain anting-anting as a cultural concept of protection and not just simply as superstition. Compare traditional forms of protection with ecological forms of protection, such as we have the mangroves, forest, rivers, disaster warnings, and also community preparedness. And finally, design a short environmental teaching activity using a Philippine protective concept. So at the end of the discussion, we can ask students to formulate their own idea of the community anting-anting, which can be what they have practiced in their own communities or what they find that is being implemented. So the main article I used is Ideas of Power in the Philippines, Amulets and Sacrifice by Axel Borchgrevink. I selected this article because in his article, he points out that anting-anting was common during the revolution and still being used today. So included in his paper, he has interviews of Boholanos who are still using anting-anting, also the habak, the one that the red cloth and you put amulet or trinkets or even paper with Latin prayers in it to serve as protection and supernatural powers. So he discussed in his paper that the three main ways of acquiring it, the supernatural powers, includes personal asceticism, certain rituals like fasting, meditation, and others, and also possession of certain objects like the anting-anting or the habak, or persons regarded as being filled with powers. So those persons are those who did the first or the second way, and most of them are interconnected to the concept of sacrifice. So the concept sacrifice is also connected to religious belief. So once we hear the concept of sacrifice, mostly in a Christian sense, the sacrificial lamb, or what Jesus did for us, he sacrificed himself. And he mentioned that the underlying idea is one of exchange. So by doing something for God or for a saint, praising, honoring, or suffering for him somehow, it is expected that he will do a service in return. So this has become like the driving force of how to empower anting-anting or even the person through sacrifice and personal asceticism. So the use of Christian imagery has given a particular form to the practices of asceticism. So also, we can notice that some of the anting-anting or the habak have religious or Christian images. So like the Santo Niño de Cebu anting-anting amulet. And also a lot of symbols of religious like angels or doves, and also Latin scripts, Latin prayers, which are used by those who are practicing, who are using anting-anting. So we also have Macario Sakay's anting-anting vest, which was said to have protected him during the revolution. And also, Sir Marben mentioned Example for you have Christian elements in this anting-anting. And Sir Marvin mentioned Leon Kilat from Karkar. So his anting-anting is also Latin scripts, which was said to have protected him during the revolution. So the Christian elements is integrated into this kind of belief and practice. So when continuing the lessons to the students, we can open by asking which of these protects people. So from there, we present 3 images. First is the anting-anting, next is the mangroves, and finally, emergency sign. So the students can say that the anting-anting is spiritual protection, and for the mangroves, physical protection, while the emergency signs are protection through information. So anting-anting is not only an object, it is part of a system of protection, discipline, sacrifice, and moral power. So continuing the discussion, we can use terms, the anting-anting, the pangontra, orasyon, pag-amping, panagang, and we can relate this to working meaning for class, and also finally bridge it into the environmental protection, which the students can use. So here, anting-anting, object believed to protect or empower. The pangontra, something used to counter danger or harm. Orasyon, protective prayer or sacred words. Pag-amping, care, caution, preparedness. And panagang, shield or protection. So we translate this into the environmental bridge. So how do communities imagine protection for our environment? Next, what counters flood, erosion, pollution, disasters? And next for orasyon, how can language protect through warnings, signs, and memory? And then environmental care and disaster readiness under pag-amping, and under panagang, we have our natural protections, the mangroves, the forest, clean rivers, and also community plans, which we can develop. So what is our community's panagang or shield? So we can ask this from our students. So since most of our students does not come from one place, we can acquire different ideas and thoughts from different places. So traditional protective idea, so the anting-anting protects the body, the orasyon protects through sacred words, pangontra counters harm, sacred trees believe discourages cutting, and tabi-tabi teaches respect for place. So in the environmental counterpart, we have the mangroves that protect the coast, disaster warnings protect through clear language, waste management counters flooding and disease, biodiversity science explains why old trees matter, environmental ethics teaches caution before disturbing land, rivers, and forests through developments. So continuing, we can divide the class and give them a group activity. So each group chooses one environmental threat. So we have all of these threats. And then under each of their threats, they have the group worksheet from which they have to fill up as a group. So what are the environmental threats? So they select one from the previous slide. And then what are the traditional productive concepts connected to it? The community protector, scientific explanation, cultural explanation, required sacrifice or discipline, teaching slogan, and one classroom activity which they can do through the environmental threat they have chosen. So as a sample answer, so sample, environmental danger, the storm surge. Traditional productive concept connected to it, we have the pangontra, the panagang, and the pag-amping. Next, community protector. What is the community protector? We have the mangrove forest that protects the coastlines from storm surge. Scientific explanation, mangroves reduce wave impact, hold soil, and serve as fish nurseries. And next, for the cultural explanation, the mangrove is like the community's panagang because it stands between the sea and the people and required sacrifice or discipline. So do not cut the mangroves, give up some short-term profit from mangroves cutting. Join replanting programs, which San Carlos has done through the years. Protect coastal zones. And the last two, the teaching slogan, so they can create their teaching slogan to promote the protection of these mangroves, like ang bakawan panagang sa baybayon. So the mangrove is the shield of the coast. And finally, one classroom activity, so students can map coastal areas and identify where mangroves have been cut or restored. And finally, we can also group sharing from all the presenters, for all the groups of the class. As a conclusion, protection requires belief, knowledge, discipline, sacrifice, and collective actions. So these are required and which is needed, which we can also teach to our students to protect our environment and also to protect people from disasters. So you can also give an assignment finally to your students. So what is the true shield of your community? What is one Philippine protective concept discussed today? What environmental danger can it help us think about? And what is one sacrifice or discipline needed for environmental protection? So this can help students really think for what they can do for the community and also for the environment. And then that is all for my references. And thank you very much and good afternoon to all.